Bog Panda.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Bog Panda. I am Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram.
I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, leave a comment, check out the merch store, pick some stuff up. You're basically naked without it. And there's laws about being naked in public. We've both learned the hard way.
Yeah, so I don't know. I've started to use the revised lie counter. There's the standard one, which I may still stay with, but now there's coming up, and I don't believe, as kind of given our recording schedule and publishing schedule, I don't believe Mike has yet to see in all of its glory a new approach to a lie counter. But
I disagree with the lie count in one of the, at the time we're recording this, recent episodes that went up, because you gave me a lie count for saying that there's a game where you'll punch somebody in the face like Chuck Garrett if they guess the number you're thinking of wrong. That game exists. That's true.
That's true.
Yeah. You might not like that game, but that game exists.
Yeah. There was a mistruth it weaved in there somewhere.
That was it.
There was no. I'm very judicious. I only call the lie when it's clear. No booth review on the lie. It was good. But, we'll drop a note in the description saying Mike disputes lie number 2. But we'll see if he can make it through the rest of this episode without incrementing his counter. But we're here to talk about Sega, which has been awesome for a really long time. And they recently announced, much to my dismay, even though I wasn't able to take advantage of what they were doing here, is they have been an arcade presence for over 50 years.
Yeah.
And they have decided they didn't renew, or they said we're done or whatever, with one of Japan's largest arcade providers. They are no longer going to be providing actual physical arcade games in Japan, and that's really where that part of their business was the big stuff. And so they're getting out of the arcade business after 50 some years, and so that's a little sad.
Definitely is. Sega is just a mainstay of the arcades, and I feel like this is the second time as a Sega fan. I love Nintendo, but at heart, I think I'm more of a Sega guy. And Genesis was probably my favorite console, or Mega Drive for our fans outside of the US. Probably my favorite console. And then the add-ons for it, I'm a huge 32X defender for those people who just desperately hate it so much. 32X is great. You guys are wrong. So big Sega fan altogether, but Sega, because of Sega did this thing where Sega was two different companies under one umbrella, Sega of Japan and Sega of America, who were not just American and Japanese offices, but two competing companies under the same umbrella who were developing ideas for the same sets of hardware. And the parent company over the Sega umbrella they were both under kind of pitted them against each other. And I think there was a time where that worked because it pushed both sides to kind of, outdo each other and constantly come up with better games and better add-ons and things like that, which was awesome until they started intentionally sabotaging each other's releases. And that destroyed Sega as a hardware company.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Sega, because of the failure of 32X and the launch of 32X, and then Sega of America coming back and causing the failure of the Sega Saturn and things like that, because of all that, when Sega finally got it together with Dreamcast, most of their fan base didn't care at that point. So that took them out of the hardware market, and they started just developing games for other companies, but they still had their hardware in arcades.
Yep.
Going for all of this time. So I feel like this is the second time now Sega is kind of backing out of, a generation of fans, even more so with this, generations of fans of their hardware in one particular marketplace.
Yeah, and the article's great. We'll include a link that kind of describes what's going on here and explains it pretty well. But the reason I say the article's great is it opened my eyes to something I think I knew a little bit about, but it got me digging after I read it a little bit more. And another special new world opened up for me. And we'll include a link to at least one video that will cover this in a little more detail as well. And that is the electric mechanical arcade deliveries that Sega did initially. And this is like you're talking 1966 and 68. And these things were moving out. And with their first one being Periscope, which when I saw Periscope, I had in my mind, so, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring this thing up and it's going to be the, the vector graphic. It's, I think I've seen this before. There's a Periscope there and it's going to be vector graphics and all that. No, 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 no. This is well before that time. It is truly mechanical electric, and electric is really not for the rendering of any gameplay. It's to have a few lights go on here or there or do some things there, but and to keep score, but really not the gameplay. And Periscope is, as you'd expect, there's a Periscope you can see, but it is a physical gameplay ocean. So it's a deep cabinet. And then there are ships that kind of cross along on the horizon, and you're able to fire torpedoes, which become basically lights underneath this plastic ocean that are torpedoes that are going through and either will successfully sink a ship and you'll get a light that'll go up and give you an explosion, or you'll miss them and all that. And I just fell in love with it. I thought it was amazing. I think I've seen versions of some of this stuff before. I don't think I've ever seen this Periscope before, but and I didn't get a chance to share the video with Mike in advance of us recording. But have you seen some of these games like Periscope? And there's another one that uses a missile, car racing one, motorcycle racing. Have you seen any of these?
So Periscope I haven't seen. It sounds really cool though, but I've seen games like that before, not in person, but just in videos and things like that.
Yeah, just remarkable engineering and some type of stuff going on, and you start to realize, one, how wonderful the advances have been in terms of what you can do, but how creative folks were initially to say, hey, so you want to have, because like the motorcycle one, there are physical little motorcycle people. Then the track is like on a conveyor belt that's running through, so you got kind of the street running underneath the motorcycles, which are basically stationary, with the exception that the other racers are moving kind of back and forth and forward, and they can potentially block you. And yours, there's just like a little rod that kind of comes out and down that you're controlling your little motorcycle guy with. And you've got to avoid kind of running into folks, and you can accelerate and do all that kind of stuff. It's just amazing to see. And they, for whatever reason, are kind of saying these are games that people are not actively restoring. And there's not a lot of those around. You can see a lot of the early pinball. We recently did a show talking about somebody's got an arcade full of all kinds of cool stuff from '84 and before. But these, I mean, I got to imagine they would be quite difficult to maintain. But just some of the coolest stuff you've ever seen. The just in terms of creative solutions, there's like an Indy 500 car racing one where the cars are clearly all on transparencies that are kind of moving back and forth, and you're trying to navigate your little car transparency past them. And if you hit a car, it stops your forward motion if the cross, but you don't get the kind of animation that you would in today's world if you kind of clipped a car. But still super cool.
I think one of the things that really appeals to me about retro gaming, it's not just the nostalgia of it being sort of the time that I got into video games. It's also, like we talked about, especially with the C64 and things like that, the weird ingenuity and things like that they would, using C64 as an example, putting games on cassettes, vinyl records, in movies, things like that, just crazy, weird engineering feats that even today are impressive. So this kind of falls into that same category for me. And Sega's kind of always felt that way to me. Like they always seemed ahead of the curve on that stuff. A lot of people now look at the Tower of Power, they called it, once you added all the attachments to your Sega Genesis that you could get, it was like 15 feet tall in your living room. But again, that was like a weird, like this was before they were adding CD-ROM drives, when computers barely had CD-ROM drives. That was not a commonplace thing, but their video game console did, and things like that, things that could expand the memory and stuff like that. So just engineering wise, really interesting feats. And this kind of falls into that as well. And I don't think there was really other companies doing that at the time.
No, I did the one. So first of all, with you 100% that the ingenuity and the creativity when you see kind of, oh, I'm going to put some software on a vinyl record or on a cassette tape or on an 8-track or something like that, all super amazing to go through. But the difference between that and the Sega mechanical electrical stuff is those folks are doing it because they wanted to. It's like they had an alternative. There were other ways to distribute their software versus a vinyl record. Where on the Sega stuff, how do I have a submarine shoot a torpedo at a boat down there? There weren't other solutions for that. They had to create a way to say, well, this would kind of look like that. But still, I'm with you that both are really impressive. I think there's a pure inventiveness to saying it can't be done. It hasn't been done. And I got to figure out how can I make this incredibly more difficult, but still do.
What's a weirder way that I can do this? Yeah.
Still smart, still clever, but it was just like, let's make it harder. So creative though, very creative. So we will include links to the article about Sega's sad departure from the arcade business stuff to some of these electromechanical stuff. Check it out because they're cool. I am going to now start to actively search nooks and crannies on eBay and Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that happen to see if there's one of these sitting out here anywhere. So I would love to get one of those era games, but I think my hunch is there aren't many of them around anymore. And if they are, they're going to be in such a dilapidated state that I lack the engineering knowledge to resurrect it. But boy, wouldn't it be cool to have one of those OG games that probably will double your electrical bill. There'll be this dull hum in your house while it's running. So
the baseline radiation just skyrockets.
Yeah, so it'll be there'll be some downsides, but I'm willing to live through it because it'll be cool. And I'll lose half the basement because it's massive cabinet. So all right. So anything else on Sega or
the only other thing I would say, and this is something I came across more recently, and I recommend it, but go into it with a gigantic grain of salt. So Sega, again, being sort of ahead of the curve on certain things, were one of the first ones to embrace CD-ROMs for games. And they saw the future of that being interactive movies. So yes. they were big on pushing and working with a lot of these interactive movie studios and pushing these interactive movies on CD-ROM games. The most infamous of these studios was Digital Pictures. Digital Pictures made Night Trap, which led to congressional hearings that our tax dollars, millions of our tax dollars went towards. Night Trap is now available on Nintendo Switch. And it's teen rated. So the original uncut Night Trap, congressional hearings. Your parents paid millions of dollars for this. But a bunch of the Digital Pictures catalog has now been bought by another company. They are remastering them in HD and putting them up on Steam at pretty affordable prices. So again, a lot of these eventually were ported to other systems like 3DO and PC and things like that. And now some of them are available virtual console wise. But these are a lot of them, for the most part, originated on Sega CD because that was one of the first CD-ROM based game units. So you can get, I believe they have Ground Zero Texas, Night Trap, and Corpse Killer. I just picked up Corpse Killer off of there. That's one that I specifically remember very fondly. The game is absolutely terrible in every way, but it is hilarious to play. It is super, super fun. It is barely a game. Like, calling it a game is a stretch. There's a few scenes you can sort of interact-ish with. It's barely a game, as many of these were. It's basically a terrible, extremely low budget movie with some interactive stuff thrown in there. And now this company that has restored these in HD, it looks even worse when you're watching it, in the best possible way, though. Like, it just makes it so fun to watch. In Corpse Killer, you are an unnamed soldier who lands on an island that is overrun with zombies, and you got to save people and kill the zombies, blah, blah, blah. You get there, and in the original release, which didn't look that great, it was very grainy and dark, and it looked cheap then. But now you can kind of see them like adjusting the Halloween mask that they're wearing and things like it is terrible in the best way. I definitely recommend it. I think I got the Corpse Killer Anniversary Edition, which has a bunch of extra stuff on there, and you can watch like the movie clips separately and things like that. And it's got like behind the scenes stuff. I think I paid like $12 for it or something like that. So they're definitely worth it. Night Trap is a genuinely good game, although it's very difficult. Ground Zero Texas is another infamous one. I believe it was the biggest budget of these interactive movie ones that they did. So I don't think it's better. It's just larger in scope. So if you really want to see it, the pinnacle of what you could throw money at that time, it's Ground Zero Texas. So all three of those are available. And I believe Ground Zero Texas was the most expensive at like $15 or something like that. So they're definitely worth checking out. I hope this company picks up more titles and puts them out.
Yeah, 4K's been the is not nostalgia's friend.
No.
Because you come
there's a driving section in the game, and by driving section I mean you're just sitting in a car while the camera points at people and they rattle off dialogue. You can literally see pieces of the car prop are held together with zip ties, which are very, very clear in HD when you're watching it.
Yeah, and you see that stuff too in movies, because like, so the Planet of the Apes series was one of those very interesting ones that they realized the movies made money, but they wanted to make more off of them. So every budget got smaller, and
Yeah.
very noticeable if you watch the whole Ape series on the thing. But beneath Planet of the Apes, the second one, they already a lower budget, so they're cutting. So, well, you don't do this fancy makeup, you just give people the Halloween Planet of the Apes mask. And when you're watching it on a TV and it's a 17-inch, it's 14-inch screen, and no high def, none of that kind of stuff, it works. You're good. Oh yeah. But now you see this stuff in the ID. It's like, oh look, there's a couple people that are made up as apes and they look pretty cool. And there's a row of people in masks, and they look just so horrible. It's so bad. But that's the way it goes.
What makes Corpse Killer work is it just the good ones are the people in the better masks. So the background people are not even trying.
All righty. Well, our show will always hold up in high def.
Absolutely.
You can count on that. No question about it. And we'd love to hear from you if you've come across any treasures that 4K's not been a friend to, or any other nostalgia stuff. Those are great finds you were talking about, Mike, on Switch. That's super cool. I'm going to have to give that some consideration. And I think with that, we'll wrap it up unless you have anything else.
No, that's it, sir.
Cool. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.